know, my name is Ann Castleton. I'm currently working at the City of Portland's Bureau of Development Services, the people that ensure building safety and enforce building code. And before that, I worked at PBEM to build the city's continuity of operations program until we got a real expert in REMTEC. And before that, I worked with Mercy Corps and other international humanitarian organizations doing disaster risk reduction. And actually, I realized that 10 years ago today, I was packing my bags to go to Haiti. So I'm glad that was 10 years ago and not today. So this, I've heard so many projects today, and really to me they all sound like something we need to do, and they all sound important, and now I'm going to try to convince you that this is also important. What this addresses is a gap in probably the connection between building officials that ensure building safety and that will ultimately do safety damage assessments during a seismic event, and emergency managers who are also thinking about it from an emergency management perspective. And because I got so much good advice at REMTEC, I did what I should have known to do from working in international development, which was go out to the stakeholders. And really, we've met with the regional building officials now, and I've talked to the state fire marshal's office, who is inheriting, is responsible for starting up a safety program for the state, to make sure that they're all on board and think this is a good idea. And they do, and of course they have the same question everybody has, is how do you staff this? How do you pull this together? How do you coordinate something like this? So what this is a committee that would bring together building officials and emergency management in the service of this project, but hopefully building some relationships that would serve us well in a big seismic event. And you can see from this one-page handout that there's like 5 main objectives. One is that committee. The other is to really do a lit review and some pretty targeted interviews to make sure, like, do we really need the tools that we're proposing here, or have we forgotten something? Is there something else that we haven't thought about? And the third is to support the state Fire Marshal's Office is tasked to build ORSAP, the Oregon Safety Assessment Program, which California has one, Washington has one. We've been training, PBEM especially has been, and RDPO has been supporting training for building damage assessors, but we don't have any state guidelines, so we're kind of following California, which is our best guess. But now the state, there's a bill, HB 2206, which was passed but not funded, to build a state program. And speaking to the Fire Marshal's office this morning, they've actually done a lot of behind-the-scenes work, and they're proposing and have other people supporting it. They're really hoping that they will get funding for at least an FTE and to build a database and a system in the short session. So one of the things that we'll do is continue to get people together to support that effort. But that's objective 3. And objective 4 is just a bunch of different tools that would really support coordinated, aligned damage assessments. For instance, RDPO already has a stranded worker agreement for emergency workers, but we could easily adapt that and develop something for inspectors, so that wherever jurisdiction you're in when the thing happens, you could support them. There's no really agreed national criteria on what is critical infrastructure and how you prioritize what you do first. This is something I'm working on for the City of Portland, but it's really something that would be great to be aligned regionally. How we train and how many damage assessors are trained, what criteria we use to say who can assess buildings, and how we're going to have all these volunteers that come in from other places and decide where they get deployed. All those things would be so much stronger if they were organized regionally as opposed to everybody doing their own thing. Also, City of Portland is just piloting a program with the port and some hospitals to where you have qualified inspectors in your own organization pre-authorizing you to be able to assess your own buildings, which would take a lot of pressure off our inspectors. So that's another program that could easily be shared out and could be adapted to different jurisdictions. So that's really the fourth objective there, is just building out some tools that everybody could use and that would be aligned. And those tools, you know, we could do more, we could do less, kind of depending on how the money is. And the last one really is taking over the RDPO and PBEM have been organizing the inspector trainings kind of religiously for the last few years to keep us trained, and so we would just roll that into this project and keep it going. So,
thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay, questions?
Part of the project is sort of building relationships with inspectors in other areas and things like that. Would you extend that to sort of the Midwest and East Coast and stuff? To sort of, if we had a whole West Coast earthquake, to kind of bring in inspectors who are kind of free to do the work, or would it just focus on like local relationships?
Well, for this project, we would focus on local and statewide, but really, the ATC 20 training, which Cal OES SAP is based on, it's almost an international standard. So people all over the country and all over the world are trained in it, and you almost don't. I hope this is correct, but it is my understanding from previous. You almost don't have to try to recruit other volunteer inspectors. They come in. And they come in, and you need to be organized to receive them and say, you go here, and we need you here, and this team needs to be relieved, and they're here. Or I'm going to match you up with somebody from my city who knows that building, and you go there. It's much more that you have to be ready to take the influx.
So it's more like credentialing, really, rather than
it's
tracking.
exactly credentialing and deploying and figuring out, like, should the city of Portland take everything, or should maybe they share? I mean, you know, what else is needed? It's going to be worse further to the coast. So really, should we push people out that way? So that's kind of, I think that's probably what this project would do, is really think through some of that.
So is there stuff about ensuring reciprocity and whatnot at the state level in this project?
Tell me more what you mean.
So when Vernonia got flooded the last couple of times and people came in from other jurisdictions to do work that were licensed and bonded elsewhere, we couldn't let them work here because there was no reciprocity with our state, with the other states that came in. I don't know if that's the same with building inspectors, but it was certainly true of plumbers and electricians and those kind of folks.
I don't exactly know the answer, but it seems like that it's exactly
Might get
what we
teased out
like.
of
I
this.
know that there's mutual aid agreements, and so we would have to make
Okay.
sure that they did this. There's mutual aid agreements that are national and regional and state and interstate. So that would be something we would really want to do, is make sure that we had the most amount of flexibility. Sherry, I can see you're thinking of something.
So this thing that BDS contacted us, and you know, and the problem is we can't participate in that one program because we don't have a structural engineer within our organization, and they had to be the lead. And I'm just trying to figure out how you're bringing in all these people that are trained to a certain level, but they aren't trained to another level to allow us to stay in our hospital buildings. So I guess I'm going to the reciprocity. Where do the structural engineers come in with their licensing, and how does that work?
Well,
So
first
find
I
that
want
out.
to correct one of the first things that you said, which was not having a structural engineer wasn't a deal breaker, because many organizations in San Francisco, for instance, just contract out with somebody.
But the documentation sent out said, you know, this, and that's why we turned it down.
Oh.
That sounds like a misunderstanding, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's not
It
this
may not be
discussion.
the end, because this is evolving, right? The state
Yeah.
has yet to release a lot more information that they need to develop around that.
And it sounds like you got
Private
another
contractor.
supporter, possible supporter.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm not supporting this, but I just want to know where that falls in, because we need, maybe that building is damaged, but we're not going to move 600 patients out of it if we don't have to.
Well, what we know now is that we know that Cal OES and WASAFE have developed a way of typing buildings and saying, this is the most complex building. Big Pink, for instance, we need structural engineers, we need a life safety, we need a mechanical. And we've now just developed that ourselves just for the city of Portland, and then saying, okay, these are the people we have that are qualified to inspect this. Here's the next level. Here's residential. We can send our plumbers to look at residential from the outside, maybe. So so we're doing that kind of typing, but really I'm doing it for the city, talking to my inspectors. We should be doing it regionally so that we have some agreement.
So the money you're asking for here would cover dealing with those structural engineers and life safety and those certifications, allowing them to utilize them within the state?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. We would certainly identify what kind of credentials do you need
Okay.
to do a certain thing.
Okay.
And how else could you get that, or how can you support that? And ultimately, with that project, which is called Equip, where people are authorized to self-inspect, that adds kind of its own layer to our Portland maps, so that then we know I don't have to send inspectors to those buildings. They're on it and they'll report back. I can use my very limited number of inspectors at these other high priority places. So it's an advantage to you to be able to continue operating. It's an advantage to us to deploy our inspectors somewhere else. So, and it's a simple program that we've kind of, not simple, but that we have learned from San Francisco, and that I think could easily be deployed regionally if people wanted to. But anyway, I heard my thing, right?
Any last questions?
Have you talked to region or any partner or any other cities in the area to get people in or any sort of?
Yes, in doing this, actually, Washington County was involved in the proposal, Clark County was involved in the proposal, and then we met, and Multnomah County looked at it, and and they've also done some work that would obviously be part of this. It's not just the city of Portland, but there's a lot of good work that's happened in the region that could be shared. But also the building officials and the state fire marshals all. So I think everybody's on board and thinks it's a good idea, and the question is, how much time can you split one person into?